For 28-year-old Clara, living alone had always been a source of pride. Her small, cozy apartment was her sanctuary, a fortress against the bustling city outside. But for the past week, her fortress had felt compromised. It started on a Tuesday, a night much like this one, with rain lashing against the glass. At precisely midnight, she heard it. A soft, hesitant knock, not on her front door, but somewhere else. She muted the TV, her ears straining. Tap, tap, tap. It sounded like it was coming from the kitchen window, 2 stories up. Impossible. She crept into the kitchen, her bare feet cold on the linoleum. Peering through the rain-streaked pane, she saw nothing but the slick, black branches of the oak tree swaying in the wind. She checked the lock. Secure, she checked the front door. Double-bolted, shaking her head. She dismissed it as the wind or a branch hitting the building. But the next night, it happened again. Midnight, tap, tap, tap. This time, it sounded closer, like it was coming from the living room window right behind her couch. Her blood ran cold. She spun around, but again there was nothing there. Just her own wide-eyed reflection staring back. This continued every single night, always at midnight. Always a soft, tentative knocking. And every night the source seemed to move. The bathroom window, her bedroom wall, the front door. She checked every lock, every latch, every possible entry point. She even called her landlord, who assured her the building was secure and that no one had reported anything unusual. She was starting to feel like she was losing her mind. On the 7th night, Clara decided she'd had enough. She wasn't going to be terrorized in her own home. Armed with her smartphone, she sat on her couch, eyes glued to the digital clock. 11:58. The rain was a torrential downpour now, a deafening roar. 11:59. Her hands were slick with sweat as she opened the voice recorder app. The clock ticked over to 12 o'clock. And right on cue. Tap, tap, tap. It came from the front door this time. Soft, but insistent. She didn't move. What? She just sat there, recording, her heart hammering against her ribs. The knocking continued for about a minute, then stopped. Silence descended, broken only by the storm. She waited for another 10 minutes before shakily getting up to check the peephole. Nothing, just the empty, rain-slicked hallway. Back on the couch, wrapped in her blanket, she took a deep breath and hit play on the recording. The sound of the rain was loud, but through it she could clearly hear the 3 distinct knocks. Tap, tap, tap. She let out a sigh of relief. It was real. She wasn't crazy. She was about to stop the recording when she heard something else. Something she hadn't heard in the room. A faint, raspy whisper, buried beneath the sound of the rain and the knocking. She turned the volume all the way up and pressed the phone to her ear. The whisper became clearer. It was a single, chilling phrase, repeated over and over. Let me in. Let me in. Clara dropped the phone as if it were on fire. She scrambled to her bedroom, slammed the door, and locked it, shoving her dresser in front of it for good measure. She spent the rest of the night huddled under her covers, listening, but heard nothing more. The next morning, sunlight streamed through her window. The storm had passed. Feeling foolish but still deeply unsettled, she moved the dresser and unlocked her bedroom door. She stepped out into the hallway, ready to put the whole ordeal behind her, and that's when she saw them. A trail of wet, muddy footprints on her clean hardwood floor. They started at the front door, which was still double-bolted from the inside and led directly across the living room, stopping right in front of her now-open bedroom door. Mark was a freelance graphic designer, which meant late nights were his normal. He'd often work until the early hours of the morning, the only light in his apartment coming from his laptop screen and a single dim lamp in the living room. It was during one of these late-night sessions that he first saw it. He'd gotten up to stretch his legs, his eyes adjusting to the gloom. And there, at the far end of the hallway that led to his bedroom and bathroom, stood a shadow. It was tall and unnaturally thin, a stark black silhouette against the slightly less dark wall. It didn't move. It just stood there. Mark blinked, rubbing his tired eyes. Must be a trick of the light, he thought. Coat on the rack, a stack of boxes. He flicked on the hallway light switch. And just like that, it was gone. The hallway was empty. He chuckled to himself, blaming sleep deprivation, and went back to work. A few nights later, it was there again. Same spot. Same unnerving stillness. He had a glass of water in his hand, and he froze, his gaze locked on the figure. It had no features, no discernible shape other than being tall and humanoid. He took a hesitant step forward, and his floorboard creaked. The shadows seemed to retract, melting back into the deeper darkness of the doorway at the end of the hall. He rushed to the light switch, flicked it on. Nothing. The hallway was empty. It became a recurring event. Every few nights, he'd catch a glimpse of the tall shadow. Sometimes it was just a fleeting shape in his peripheral vision. Other times it would be standing there for a full minute before he worked up the courage to turn on the light and make it vanish. He tried moving furniture, changing the lamp's position, everything he could think of to debunk it. But the shadow always returned, a silent, looming presence in the dark. He started leaving the hallway light on, but the feeling of being watched never quite went away. One night, exhausted from a tight deadline, Mark fell asleep on the couch. He woke up abruptly, a shiver running down his spine. The room was cold, colder than it should be. The lamp was off, plunging the apartment into near-total darkness. He sat up, his heart pounding. He felt it before he saw it. It's that oppressive sense of a gaze fixed upon him. He slowly looked towards the foot of his bed, and his breath hitched in his throat. The shadow was there. It wasn't in the hallway anymore. It was in his bedroom, sitting at the end of his bed, a patch of pure blackness against the gray gloom. It was so close, he could almost reach out and touch it. He was paralyzed with terror. He couldn't scream, couldn't move. He just stared as the tall, featureless shape sat there, impossibly still. Its head seemed to tilt slightly as if it were studying him. Mark squeezed his eyes shut, praying for it to be a dream, a nightmare brought on by stress and lack of sleep. He counted to 10, his mind screaming. 1, 2, 3. He had to wake up. This couldn't be real. 9, 10. He slowly opened his eyes. He was in his bed. The morning sun was filtering through the blinds. The room was empty. He let out a shaky breath, a sob of relief catching in his chest. It was just a nightmare, a horribly vivid nightmare. He sat up, his body aching with tension, and swung his legs over the side of the bed. He glanced at the large, ornate mirror that stood on his dresser, the one that faced his bed, and his heart stopped. In the reflection, he saw his bedroom, saw himself sitting on the edge of the bed. And sitting right next to him, its dark form overlapping his own reflection, was the shadow. The mirror showed 2 figures on the bed. He was not alone. 4. 17-year-old Maya. The calls started on a Monday. It was 3:13 a.m. when her phone buzzed on her nightstand, lighting up the dark room. The screen read, "Unknown number." Annoyed, she answered, ready to tell off a wrong number caller. But the line was silent for a moment, then a distorted, electronic-sounding voice spoke a single, chilling sentence. "I'm right behind you." Maya's heart leaped into her throat. She whipped her head around, but there was nothing there but her closet door and the pile of clothes on her chair. "Who is this?" she demanded, her voice shaking. The line went dead. She tried to call the number back, but it was untraceable. Shaken, she dismissed it as a sick prank call from someone at school. The next night, it happened again. 3:13 a.m. Unknown number. The same distorted voice. "I'm right behind you." This time she didn't say anything. She just hung up, her hands trembling. She got out of bed, turned on every light in her room, and checked under her bed and in her closet. Nothing. She was completely alone. The calls continued every single night. Always at 3:13 a.m. Always the same number. Always the same terrifying message. "I'm right behind you," she told her parents, who thought it was a cruel but harmless prank. They told her to just block the number, but she couldn't. The calls came through as unknown, with no number to block. She tried turning her phone off, but it would mysteriously turn back on just in time for the call. She was terrified to be in her own room, the feeling of being watched becoming unbearable. After a week of sleepless nights, Maya decided she needed proof. She downloaded a call recording app. That night, she lay in bed, her phone in her hand, waiting. As the clock turned to 3:13 a.m., her screen lit up. She took a deep breath, hit record, and answered the call, putting it on speaker. "I'm right behind you." The distorted voice crackled through the speaker. Maya didn't flinch. She stared at the wall, her jaw tight. "Who are you? What do you want?" she asked. trying to keep her voice steady. There was no reply, just silence. After a few seconds, the call ended. She immediately opened the recording. She hit play. First, she heard her own voice, clear as day. "Who are you? What do you want?" Then the distorted voice from the call, just as she'd heard it. "I'm right behind you." But then, the recording continued for a few seconds longer. And in those final seconds, there was another sound. A sound that hadn't come from the phone's speaker. A sound that hadn't been in the room with her. Or so she thought. It was the soft, distinct sound of someone inhaling sharply. It was quiet, but it was undeniably there. A breath taken right next to the phone's microphone. A breath that wasn't hers.